creating community partnerships to meet tangible needs. My name is Father Dave Mowers. I'm the rector of Trinity Episcopal Church in Baraboo, and be moderating the presentation this evening. This is part of a new, call it an experiment by the Diocese of Wisconsin to have mission action teams around key areas of church life. And this is the mission action team for community engagement. And this is our first real program. So thank you for joining us. Community engagement and partnership and outreach are all really important things. And perhaps, I mean, it always feels a little dramatic to say it's never been more important than it is now, but it's never been more important than it is now, I think. I'm happy to bring you this webinar tonight, and we have three panelists who I'll introduce to you, and I'm so grateful for their expertise. They are the Reverend Deacon Bill Dunlop, who is the Archdeacon of the Diocese of Wisconsin as of the first of the year. He's also deacon in residence at Good Shepherd Episcopal Church in Sun Prairie and St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Watertown. And I believe his Watertown assignment is coming to an end shortly, but has been there for several years. And actually we'll be talking mostly about, I think, Watertown things tonight. So it'd be good to hear from him. We also have Father Jeff Ward, who is rector of St. Christopher's Episcopal Church in River Hills. Jeff was either the first priest to come to the Diocese of then Milwaukee before me, or he was the first one to come after me. I forget which order we came in, but that means he's been at his place in River Hills for just about 8 years, just like I've been here in Baraboo. Yep. And St. Christopher's has done a number of things in his tenure to engage with the community, including an initiative called St. Chris in the City, where I think they're working with a community agency in Milwaukee. He'll say some more about that and perhaps some other ways that they've gotten up to community engagement at St. Christopher's. And then finally, we have the Reverend Monica Burkert-Brist, who is rector of St. Paul's in Watertown. We have good Watertown representation on our panel tonight, but they're doing a lot of good work there. So it'll be good to hear from Monica about the Mary's Place ministry that meets a number of different tangible needs in the Watertown community. So our format this evening goes like this. Now that we've introduced the panel, we'll have each panelist talk about their respective ministry for a few minutes, and then the panelists will talk amongst themselves for 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how much time we've got total, when everyone is finished with their individual presentation. And then we'll reserve hopefully as much as 20 minutes, but for sure at least 15 at the end for questions from you who have come to this panel tonight. And we're going to try to get out of here by 8 o'clock is the goal. So with that, we'll go Bill and then Jeff and then Monica in that order. So Bill, would you tell us about your work in Watertown and Sun Prairie?
Yeah. Actually, I am going to talk about both Sun Prairie and Watertown. And certainly on my voice, I've had laryngitis for quite a bit here, but it's slowly getting better. Let's see. And already, I'm going to share my screen here shortly, as soon as I get it. Here we go. First, I'm going to talk about Shelter from the Storm in Sun Prairie. Good Shepherd is a small parish. We worship about 20 at our English service and about 15 at our Spanish service. And one of the things that we did through contacts in the community was start a relationship with the local woman and family shelter. And we started out serving the meal a month at the shelter. And there, I'm trying to find, I'll just go through some of the pictures. But we're basically building a relationship with the families that are there. Most of the families are there anywhere from 6 months to a year. After the meals got started about a year later, we adopted a room, so we outfit the room each year. And then I've done other work, attend their larger banquets, and have also, my wife Amy, helped them redo their healing garden. And it was an opportunity for a small church to partner with a much larger community. They have a staff of about 3 or 4 and 11 rooms that they bring the families in who are homeless, and then transition them to an apartment or some sort of living situation. And it was, like I said, it was a partnership that we actually developed through a contact that um, with the Sun Prairie area ministers meet occasionally, and out of that contact. The other one I would like to highlight is the Shared Community Mission Group in Watertown. It's a group of 12 churches that banded together about 14 years ago to serve the students in the schools. They provide a weekend bag of food to families, and the qualification is basically that they're on the free lunch program. This is one of the packing days. This is when we packed the larger Christmas meal, and they pack a bag of food during the entire food school year and send it out into the community to those families. Right now, we're serving 55. We have 55 bags, and we're serving 48 families. And additionally, in the fall, they collected school supplies and backpacks and create bags of grade specific school supplies for all the kids who register, and then have backpacks available for them to pick up. So each bag is grade specific. So what a third grader needs, they get in their bag. And the other thing they also do is a socks and underwear drive about this time of year, and serve the different schools. The backpack program served this year about 550 kids in the Watertown area. But it's in another offshoot of that, sandwiches in the park, which are run during the summer, primarily to supplement the families who don't get lunch in the school during the year. And 5 churches each take a turn in one of the parks. And we've seen both families come in and take advantage of this, but also a sense of community develop between those families. The 12 churches have been working together, like I said, for 14 years. It came out of something that Mother Monica will probably talk about today, is clergy roundtable, where a need was identified in the community. Primarily, leadership got together, banded together, and we have those 12 churches have kept going for those 14 years. Right now, they're in the process of kind of looking at their organization, since the need is increasing, and actually have written and adopted bylaws in hopes to become a 501c3. They pretty much have been operating as a loose bunch of people who just gather money and food. They're supplemented by one of the food pantries and distribute the food. But it shows the ability of a bunch of churches working together to serve a need in the community. And they have one focus, and that's on students in school, both during the school year with food or emergency food, and then the school backpacks and school supplies.
Very good. Thank you, Bill.
All right.
Jeff.
Excellent. Yeah, like Bill, we really opted for a collaborative kind of approach when it came to mission and outreach. When I first came to St. Christopher's, which was indeed 8 years ago next month, we at that time, St. Christopher's, of course, is a suburban parish. We're pretty, as far as distance, we're rather removed from downtown and some of the areas in the city that need attention. And what was happening previously. I mean, St. Christopher's has always been a beneficent group of folks, but what they were doing was picking a few different charities and sending some money each year to each of them, and then had a long-standing relationship with the Gathering, which was in fact an Episcopal ministry at its or in its origin. Ultimately became its own 501c3, but 30 years ago it was an Episcopal ministry, feeding ministry for the inner city. And so we maintain that connection because it's very strong. It's very long term. But we really wanted to do more than just send checks to selected organizations because really at its core we decided that that really is more how foundations operate. That we really wanted to engage the pews. We wanted to have it be more direct contact and be how church operates. And so like Bill, we decided to collaborate, but we didn't quite know who to collaborate with. And so about 7 years ago, our mission and outreach chair, along with our senior warden and I, actually went down and met with Mayor Barrett in Milwaukee. And he was very generous with his time and attention with us, which I was rather impressed with to begin with. And we said to him, we may be a remote suburb of some kind, in the eyes of many, but we have deep concerns for the welfare of our city, and we are here to ask, where could we serve best? And so, and this is kind of a repeated thing for us in general, that we collaborate also with our village partners in River Hills. We're very close to the actual manager of the village, the police, fire, rescue, first responders. We really try to have a very collaborative kind of public and religious partnership. And so he was very helpful. He directed us specifically to the near west side of Milwaukee. And we kind of just cruised around and say, okay, well, what do we do here? And we ended up associating with a community center, faith-based community center called City on a Hill. And they are just really a marvelous organization. They've been around there 20 years. They're situated at 23rd and Kilbourne, which is about 2 miles west of Marquette. And they are situated in a part of the city that has been particularly affected by generational poverty and systemic trauma. And so we came to them and said, we would like to, work with you. We don't have to have our names on the building. We don't have to have a lot of public credit. We're not here to steal ministries, to duplicate them, to do anything other than to help lift this neighborhood. And our only criteria really was that the things that we do, we want them to be targeted, effective, and sustainable. And that's been our motto ever since, is what can we do for the present time, knowing that needs shift, demographics shift, things happen. But what can we do that is targeted, effective, and sustainable? And it's been a marvelous partnership ever since. And we just are part of their group. And what we did is we started by having some of our volunteers help out at their monthly free medical clinic they have on second Saturday of the month. And it got us just into the door, familiarity with what's going on. And after a few months of that, I talked to the then executive director, and I said, aside from this, what is your biggest need? What is your biggest gap that you have? And she said literacy, because they have an after-school program that serves kids in the area that attend about 11 different schools. But they come there for an after-school program that gives them a safe place to be. It ultimately gives them an evening meal before they go home and a variety of activities. But they said that there are a lot of these kids that were reading 2 and 3 grades behind the level that they should. And so we launched a literacy initiative. We paid for the curriculum. We provided some volunteers. And we were down there each week helping kids learn how to read. And it was going along wonderfully until coronavirus, and that killed kind of our face-to-face contact. And of course, it really relies on that, that face-to-face to really engage an individual child on advancing their reading skills. But we continued to help out part of how we helped out in that period of time was to help them to arrange for a learning pod, which we were doing in St. Christopher's for these 11 families that all had 22 children between the grades of second grade and fifth grade that were faced with trying to learn from home with both parents working, which was just an impossible task for anyone in that situation. And so we organized a learning pod at St. Christopher's. It was highly successful. We followed tremendous protocols that we laid forth and that we ultimately shared the entire blueprint with City on a Hill. And it was interesting because we learned some of the differences in terms of learning by doing that, because the kids that we were serving up in River Hills were all from one school. And of course, the kids that are in the after school program at City on a Hill and associated families were from 11 different schools. So we gave them the blueprint, but we modified the blueprint to have, instead of just like one screen and one source for the teaching mechanism, we actually got each of the children a pad a computer that they could participate in. It was also highly successful. And so we continued to just explore what are your other gaps. That was our whole thing, is to say, we're here to help fill gaps and connect dots and have them again, true up to that whole idea of being targeted, effective, sustainable. And so we then launched, coming out of coronavirus, we launched an employment initiative, because one of the issues is they're about a mile and a half away from Employ Milwaukee, which is the county workforce development firm. And we partnered with the folks there, and particularly a wonderful dear friend of ours, Millie Kobe, who's just an absolute fireball of energy and love, and she is ready to do the Lord's work at a drop of a hat. And she's an executive in Employ Milwaukee. And we were able to convince that organization to start a satellite program at City on a Hill. We rent the space. They provide one of their staff there twice a week, and we actually are bringing the employment opportunity into the neighborhood. This is very much, a church thing, because this is how, we see Jesus in our lives, is coming to where the need is, where the people are. And that has worked out well. And they have connected people with hundreds of jobs, and where they're actually using it as a template to start satellite locations in other parts of the city. Because one of the things that we told Mayor Barrett is, anything we do, you're welcome to steal. We'll be happy to, give our results and let other neighborhoods enjoy the same thing. So every year since, we sit down each year in August, and we map out what we're going to do the next year. The literacy initiative has taken a few different turns just because of functionality, different kinds of curriculum, different kinds of approaches. We also provide about 70 Thanksgiving meals, entire Thanksgiving meals, to the families that are associated with the after school program. We do an angel tree at Advent, where we have, again, about 70 different gifts that we get specifically for children by way of their request. People take an ornament off of our Advent tree. On the first Sunday of Advent, they bring back the gift. The second Sunday, we take it down to City on a Hill in time for their family Christmas meal and event. And we've done just other things called Adopt a Block, where we walk around the neighborhood, literally knocking on doors, offering a little, just kind of a little welcoming kind of gift, but information about all the services that they have there, which are many. And so each year we just do the adjustments, and we follow through, and we learn what works, what doesn't work, what could be different. And all under that model of being targeted, effective, and sustainable. And indeed, it has turned out to be just that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Then Monica.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Monica Burkert-Brist, and as Dave said, I'm the priest and rector at St. Paul's Watertown. I'm in my 4th year now. Watertown is a community of about 20,000 people, to give you some idea of our size. And for a number of years, as Bill mentioned, approximately 10 to 12 area congregations have actively worked together ecumenically to serve the needs primarily of children in our community. But that, I think, has branched out and gotten a broader mission, I think, has been discerned over the years. Bill mentioned something called the Clergy Roundtable, which is a loose fellowship of area clergy who join together once a month, literally just for fellowship at lunchtime and a quick meal and a check-in with each other. And out of that ongoing collaboration and friendship, things like the Shared Community Mission Group was created with lay leaders and clergy working side by side. There are a number of ministries that Bill highlighted for you that he, in his pictures, in addition to the ones he mentioned, there are also 2 meals provided every week, evening meals, one on Monday and one on Thursday every week at 2 different area churches. And the different churches in the community take turns helping host and provide some of the food necessary for those meals. So this Shared Community Mission Group is, in terms of food ministry, managing to provide bags of food to children identified as having food insecurity on the weekends by the local school system. They are doing the school support of school supplies in the fall. They are providing, there's 2 meals a week being provided by area churches for any families, no questions asked. And then in addition, in the summertime, when we have food insecurity because of the loss of the school lunch program, we have these bag lunches that we offer in the park, and 5 different churches take turns doing that. You would be surprised how much you can do on a very small budget. And I'll be happy to answer questions about that later. But almost all of the things that we do through St. Paul's are either funded by relatively small grants of money from different nonprofit organizations, or from sometimes applying through the diocese or the national church, or frankly from donations from local merchants. So you don't have to have a really big church budget in order to do really wonderful things. And you also don't have to have a huge congregation either. We are a congregation with, I would say, a regular Sunday attendance of about 50. The main flagship ministry I was going to highlight for you tonight is something called Mary's Room. And I have a short presentation that Dave has ready to share with you. And we'll kind of just go through that very briefly together. Mary's Room was created approximately a decade ago, perhaps a little longer. It opened in 2011, and it was an outreach program out of St. Paul's Episcopal Church. It is still run out of the lower level of our church. It started out giving only a few diapers a month and stocking a few clothes for families who had needs out of some big, Tupperware, tubs that we kept in the basement. We serve families primarily in the Watertown School District, but we have expanded our area basically to anyone within a reasonable distance of the Watertown community, including Jefferson and Dodge counties. We also, go ahead, Dave. We also, on an emergency basis, will provide at least one-time assistance to anyone, no questions asked, no matter where they are from. And we are a community, as you see, of parents, of children, and of volunteers. The right-hand picture there on the right is our main room. And you can't see it real well here, but there's racks and racks of clothing. We provide clothing, child equipment, diapers, wipes, diaper creams, baby shampoos, things like that. And then also books for children, primarily from infancy up to about age 4. Go ahead, Dave. Thanks you. There, yes, we supply diapers. Until recently in 2022, we were very, very fortunate to create a long-term relationship now with the Village Diaper Bank out of Madison, which some of you may have heard of. Because of them, we are now able to get diapers for free when we used to actually have to purchase them to give away. And as a result, that's enabled us to change all of our funding priorities to things that we have to buy, like equipment and supplies for parents, whereas before we were actually spending money buying diapers on the regular market. This is a picture of the Village Diaper Bank warehouse, just so you can see that's what it looks like in Madison. We have to go up monthly in order to pick up the diapers, and we get anywhere from 9 to up to 12,000 diapers a month from the diaper bank to give away. This is what our diaper room looks like when it gets back to St. Paul's. We serve up to 4T size clothing, and then we have diapers and pull-ups up to about age 4 to 5. We also provide diapers for a handful of children, about 15, I believe, that we have, where we have doctor's notes that they have certified skin allergies. And as a result, they can't use generic diapers. We have to have special brand name diapers for them. And we actually use our funds to buy those for them. This is the additional thing we provide: clothing from newborn to 4T, high chairs, strollers, pack and plays, which are frequently in demand because many of our families are transient. They don't stay in one place for very long. They may even be homeless or couch surfing. And so a pack and play is something they can keep with them when they have to travel. They're also heavily relied upon by the social service agencies to ensure that a newborn going home is not going to be in a dangerous co-sleeping arrangement. So we are frequently called upon to provide pack and plays. We really don't provide cribs very much, but we also provide toys and baby and toddler toiletries. Go ahead. That's just a picture of the toy room. All those toys were donated. None of those were purchased. You can keep going. This past year we launched something, and every family that was registered with Mary's Room was given what we called a wellness kit. We realized that medical assistance provides no funding for families for things that you think of as over-the-counter medications. And mothers were frequently unable to get a thermometer, get antibiotic cream or lotion, dental supplies, things like that for their children. So we created a wellness kit with help from local dentists in the area, and also some help from the local pharmacies, and purchased some items. And we provided things like alcohol wipes, antibiotic salve, Band-Aids, toothpaste, and toothbrushes, a nasal bulb, for infants extracting nasal discharge, and a thermometer and saline spray. We really wanted to provide Tylenol, infant and children's Tylenol, but we were discouraged by the local pharmacies from doing that because of issues with language barriers and people potentially giving out the wrong dosages to their children. So this year we're exploring the possibility of creating gift cards with one local pharmacy so the mothers could go there or the parents could go there and purchase at the pharmacy and get instructions. You can keep going. We also have something called Kathy's Reading Room. Kathy, who is one of our active parishioners, is a retired special reading teacher from the public school system, and she is passionate about helping the children learn to read and reading to them. And so we have a corner and lots of free books, increasingly books that are bilingual or also solely in Spanish, so that families can go home and have their children pick out a book when they come in to shop, as we call it, although the shopping is all free. You can keep going. Then last year, we tried an experiment, which is one of the things we noticed was that many of these families who come and use Mary's Room are very isolated. They don't have friends in the community. They live in a very isolated type of situation, and a lot of the mothers don't have contact with other mothers either. And the children oftentimes are rather isolated, don't go to play groups or anything like that. So we offered something called a foodie class with a grant from the local community health foundation. And we offered a cooking class over 3 nights in the church kitchen with a couple of our lay leaders. And the whole point, we provided free childcare for the children. We provided a gas card for the moms to be able to come to the class. And then at the end of it, they prepared a meal together. And then they were sent home with the supplies all prepared and ready to go for 2 dinners. And we did that for 3 weeks in a row over the summer months. Those are the 3 of the moms on the left, and those are the children playing while they were cooking. We're hoping to do it again this year with a new grant that's pending. And this is just a little description of how we find families, or how families find us. We used to require a WIC registration form, but since I arrived, we've expanded that because not all families are WIC eligible who have needs. The reason they went to, just so you know, if you're ever planning to do something like this, the reason we went to any kind of eligibility criteria was because in the early years, they found people would come in and take free things, and then we would find them being resold on Facebook or one of the lists, Craigslist. So rather than have people deliberately taking free things for the purposes of selling them, we created some eligibility criteria. As a practical matter, as I said, we never really turn anyone away, but they're asked to either provide WIC eligibility or a referral. And we get referrals from the school system, local law enforcement, the public health agencies, the food pantries, and area churches. So these are our numbers from 2024. We had a total of 1,091 family visits, 1,300, almost 1,400 children received diapers, and we had 89 new families register. Approximately 45%, we believe, we don't ask people their ethnic origin or ethnic information, but we, from our own basis and our own best guess estimate, is that we have about a 40 to 45% Hispanic population. We have expanded to providing all of our registration materials and instructions and forms in both Spanish and English. And we now have one evening where we can offer for certain a translator to assist families who come who don't speak any English. And we're hoping to expand that. We're open 3 times a week. So we're hoping to expand that so we have someone all 3 times as we go forward. If you'd like to learn more about it, we have a website, marysroom.org, or you can find us on Facebook. We have a wish list on Amazon if you look us up. But if you'd like to learn more about this kind of a ministry, it is really, truly not that hard to start. And we'd be happy to share our experiences with you.
Monica, you guys, this is awesome. You guys do such good work. I've got just a couple questions that we'll get started with the conversation. If you are not one of the panelists and you've just heard these presentations, and if you find yourself with questions, you can drop them in the chat, or you can hold on to them, and I'll call on you in a few minutes, and we can ask them that way. But either way, I guess I'd love to hear from all of you about how do you get started with something like this? If you just have like nothing like this in your congregation, and someone says we should do more outreach, that's the sort of thing Jesus people ought to be doing, what do you do next? How did you, and some of you weren't there when the ministries that you're part of got going, but what do you have people do?
One of the things that I'm trying to do is to go out in the community and get involved in some organization that is oriented towards one of the areas that I'm interested in, either youth and or housing, and usually either the city coalition or usually the group of ministers that get together, have people from city staff come in and just become known. And then all of a sudden, someone will mention something to you. Or you'll get together and have a discussion and identify a gap. And I believe that's how Mary's Room got started. And there were a bunch of people got together and there was a gap. And then when, St. Paul's was able to step forward. And one of the things that is really good in Morgantown is they tend to try to make sure that only one church or organization tries to fill a gap. So if one is identified, like Mary's Room was diapers and kids supplies, fill that gap in one place, rather than everybody trying to do it.
So you don't have like 6 baby banks in one city or whatever.
Right. Yeah, right.
That is a huge part.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
Jeff mentioned going and meeting with the mayor in Milwaukee. I actually think it's really easy to turn to your public officials in your community. Now, some of them may be more plugged into their communities than others, but there's no harm in going to your local mayor. If you know somebody on the city council, going and finding the public health officials in your community and sitting down with them and asking if they have time for a cup of coffee. The local school district, the social workers in the school or the school counselors are wonderful sources of information about what the needs of the community are. And then you can take a lay leader, hopefully, with you. The clergy shouldn't be doing this alone. Neither should deacons, even though that's a big part of their mission. But the lay leaders should then say to you, hopefully, this speaks to our heart, right? Is pick something then when you hear what kind of needs are in the community, this speaks to our heart. And we'd like to mobilize around this, or we have talents in our congregation that can do that. And so I think it's a matter of first just asking questions, going out in the community and saying, how can we help if there's a need? Or go to a ministry that exists in your community. If there's a food bank, go to the people who run the food bank and say, tell me what the other problems are. If we were going to meet a need that you have that's not being met, what would it be? And then sort of work it from there.
I was interested that all of you mentioned interacting with either kind of government or school officials in the ministries you got up to. You're either taking referrals from public officials, or you're going to meet with the mayor, or you're kind of all of those things. And that was an interesting commonality in all of your stories, even though in some ways they're very different. But that was a similarity. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing you got to also get to know your own community, because it, like, the people I interact with in Watertown are completely different than the people that I interact with in Sun Prairie. Part of it is I live in Sun Prairie, so I have some ownership there. But in Watertown, I tend to interact with the other churches and with the different support agencies. They have a family connections at the library that routinely bring in all the support agencies and get them together. Now in Sun Prairie, I tend to have more contact with city staff and the mayor. In fact, I've been asked if I was going to run for office, and I keep shaking my head. But just you have to understand your community and where you're going to be able to get things done. And
I agree with that 100%. I think asking questions, that's Monica's spot on. Start off by asking questions, lots of them, and introducing yourself. And I really appreciate the comments about working with public officials, because I think it helps to also set aside some of the illusion of somehow the government and church have to be like totally separate from one another. The fact is that they need each other. And one of the wonderful things about Holy Milwaukee is that Millie and the other executives there started a right before coronavirus, they started a faith leader initiative. They invited to that initiative Mayor Barrett, Gwen Moore, House Representative, and some other local officials. And Mayor Barrett was actually very eloquent in saying to this faith leader group, there were about 150 different pastors from all over the city, that we need you to work with us, because the people in ways that we don't, and that working collaboratively together, we can all do more than we do trying to do it separately. And we had a follow-up meeting to that meeting at St. Christopher's in our theater, and we invited a group of those same pastors that wanted to dive a little deeper into that. And I was really surprised when one pastor came forward and she said, believe it or not, in our area of the city, one of the issues that is troubling is over-resourcing. And I thought, over-resourcing, how can you be over-resourced? But it was exactly what you were talking about, Bill, about having, she pointed specifically to a backpack program. And backpack programs are wonderful. I mean, you have one going there obviously very successfully. But what was happening in her area is somebody came out with a backpack program. The next thing you know, 3 others showed up doing the same exact thing. So they were over-resourced in one area and under-resourced in a variety of others. And one way to do that is through collaboration, interfaith collaboration, and intra collaboration with our officials. And the last thing I'll say about that is that, very early on, I went over to introduce myself when I first got there, and to the police and the village. And we've had a marvelous relationship, because I told them, I may not be an official chaplain for you, but if you ever need anything, if you ever feel that a pastoral presence is necessary, please just give me a call. And I was surprised that about 6 months later, I was coming out of a 10 o'clock service, and the administrator came rushing into the sacristy and says, the police are on the phone. They want to talk to you. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. That's a great way to stop it, end a service. And I got on the phone and they said, we have an emergency happening right now. It was a really, really tragic overdose death in a home in River Hills. And would you come over? And I said, of course. And I rushed over. And it was indeed an extremely tragic situation. A mother overdosed. She was found by her 11-year-old daughter, who even more tragically found the dead grandfather in the same place. And unfortunately, this included, it was a fairly, the grandfather incident was a bloody one, and this was an overdose. And it was just absolutely a horrific scenario. And so, I did as much as we could within our powers to pastor to her, not only at the moment, but ongoing after that until she moved out of state. But it also was an availability. The police officers were really, really shaken by this event. And sometimes they really need us as much as the clients that they serve need us. And this really turns into a true sense of, not only it goes beyond collaboration, well into pastoral synergy. And I think that's what we're really called to do. We're called to be a real, true, genuine part of the community in every way, shape, or form. And when we do that, we lead in, ask questions, make ourselves available, try to find ways to connect the dots and fill the gaps, and marvelous things begin to happen.
So I've got one more question for you all, and then we'll open it up for questions from our friends who are with us. If I just look down the list of people who are watching this panel, I noticed that it's mostly lay people, and we're all clergy in this panel. And if it's one thing for the pastor, for the priest, to go and meet the mayor or whatever. But what would you tell a layperson who is maybe in a congregation that doesn't have a ministry like this, a community engagement or outreach ministry, or doesn't have one that works very well? What can you do if you don't have a caller? And what role do lay people play in the ministries that you're involved in?
Can I start with that? Because that was almost a slow pitch to me, David, because I was
Hey, all right.
And I was sitting here as Jeff was finishing up, and I was thinking to myself, we need to make sure we emphasize before we get off this call that this doesn't have to be something that the clergy do, nor should it even necessarily be something the clergy do. The visibility is the key, not who it is that's being visible. And what I mean by that is, I, for example, have been in Watertown now. I'm getting into my 4th year here. And this is only in the last year and a half, what I say, have people really started to get to know who I am and put my name together with St. Paul's. In a lot of churches now, you're served by a clergy person who may or may not be in residence all the time in your community, or you may be in a shared situation with where you're sharing your clergy with another congregation. Your priest isn't always there. You may not have that luxury, but the whole point is you folks are there. You have been there much longer probably than your clergy have. And you may well be there much longer than your clergy will be because none of us always stay in the same place forever. So it's your connections to the community probably that count even more than the connections of the people wearing the collar. And band together, just 2 or 3 of you, right? And if you don't want to start with the mayor of your city, start with your local council person for whom you are a constituent, or start with your local state representative to the assembly. Those are all folks that, are usually pretty happy to talk to their constituents. And don't be afraid of the fact that you don't have that collar. Go in and just say, there's several of us in the community who would like to help with X. We'd like to find out why, how to do that, or what you think the need would be. And then go from there, because I don't think you should be shy at all about that. I think it's better if it's lay-led, and it's stronger if it's lay-led.
And actually, I've had a couple different times in my years here where someone in the congregation has said to me, hey, there's this person or this group that's doing really interesting stuff. Could you come with me? And I could introduce you, especially when I was new. Would you come with me and I'll introduce you and show you around? And those kinds of conversations where you have lay people and clergy talking, you can get some really interesting synergy sometimes. And things evolve, and you never know. Nothing's ever set for very long in these sorts of ministries, and it's those kinds of sparks and conversations that sometimes turn a ministry onto a different trajectory. And so don't be afraid to be in touch with your clergy and say, hey, there's this really neat thing or neat person, or I have an idea for this, and would you go with me to do? And I think most clergy would be thrilled to hear that somebody is thinking about how the church can do more outreach or different kinds of outreach, and wants you to come with them to meet somebody. So yeah, so that's a good thing to do. Bill, and then we'll open it up.
Like that shared community mission group, I'm filling in for a lay person who left. And I sort of being on the committee, and it was originally started by a separate layperson who was with it for 12 of the 14 years. And I think there's myself and one pastor who are actually kind of active in it. The rest are lay leaders in the community. And in St. Prairie, where I live, trying to be more than the catalyst and bringing the two groups together, and then kind of stepping back. With the meals, they've kind of taken on their own, and now we have people who on their own go over and deliver some gifts and supplies, do the gardening, do all sorts of work there. So sometimes it's just being a catalyst and getting the relationships going. And that relationship has gone now for about 2.5 years. And people are connected now between the two communities.
Very good. Well, if you have questions for our panelists or for me, would love to have you raise your hand, and you can change my screen so I can see your faces. So you can either raise your hand with the Zoom function to raise your hand, or you can just turn your camera on and wave frantically, and I'd be happy to just call on you. So whatever works for you, and then we'll have you unmute and give your question. John Allen.
I live in South Milwaukee, and St. Mark's Episcopal Church has no priest, and they've been struggling, and the senior center closed, and so they one of the members was going, and she's convinced a group of people from the senior center to come to St. Mark's to set up what they were doing. So when you say, what do we look for? Yeah, well, that's an answer to prayer.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the Holy Spirit just drops one in your lap, right?
Right. And that's what exactly happened.
But you had to have a parishioner who had the forethought of saying, maybe my church can help, right? I mean, you had to have somebody was willing to see that need and then say, we can connect this to our own congregation. And that's why I'm saying all of you on the call all have that ability.
The other thing is you can go talk to ecumenical partners. I know Milwaukee, like on Wisconsin Avenue, there were 3 churches that were doing meals, and all Redeemer, St. Paul's, and St. James, and the cathedral. And we all got together and said, how do we rearrange it that a meal is served in the morning, a meal is served at lunch, and a meal is served in the evening. St. Ben's did that. That the ecumenical partners we have are more than willing to work together, except in Watertown. I think you're all Wisconsin Synod, right?
Even some of the less ecumenical synod churches have been willing to be part of the shared community mission group.
Right.
They won't take part in ecumenical services with us. There are certain things they won't do, but they will come together, at least to a limited degree, for outreach. And so I feel like we're blessed that way. But yeah, there are limits to how much ecumenism we're able to achieve. So in this community, that's true.
Thanks, John. Are there other questions?
I'm curious if each individual could share the 3 things that their ministries have in common.
in common with each other.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Panelists, do you notice commonalities between the ministries that we've described here tonight?
I may just jump in and say that collaboration seems to be at the top of it, whether it be ecumenical or even interfaith, or along with community leaders, government officials. Collaboration is everything, and I think that not only does it serve to bring the synergy forth, but it is really truly an example of what would Jesus do? I mean. Uh, the idea of Jesus coming to people where they are, of going from town to town in every angle, and it just totally inclusive, and all of these things. It really is Christ-like examples, and of course, our patron saint, Saint Christopher's, is the whole story behind Saint Christopher's is being a Christ bearer. And I think that I'm hearing in all three of these, and as well as others, that those are dominant themes. They just have to be matched up with commitment and consistency. The reason that we really have kind of carried that banner of making sure what we do is targeted, effective, and sustainable is because we learned in working with City on a Hill that there are examples of situations, whether it be government, churches, or individuals, foundations, whatever, that come in with a flurry of resources, and people get kind of excited, and suddenly they vanish, and actually now matters are worse because trust is broken. So I'm hearing in all three of these a true sense of community trust.
One of the things that I hear in all of them is a willingness to fail, a willingness to have things not go how you expected them to go, and then to pivot. And I think that's really important because I was saying to my senior warden the other day that I feel like a lot of times we just sort of trip backwards into opportunities. And she's on this call and said, well, you're at least open to tripping backwards into opportunities. And that openness is important. And it is. And I think all of you described ways in which what started as one thing shifted into something else. Either because you got more input from civic officials, or because you kind of took care of a problem in one area and then said, okay, what's next? What else don't you have? What else can we help with? And having the flexibility, and church people aren't always the most flexible people. So having the flexibility to be able to say, okay, well, this thing that we were doing isn't working quite right, or we tried something, we thought it was a good idea, and it really isn't targeted, effectable, sustainable, to use Jeff's phrase. And so we're going to do something else. And I think that's a really important thing. And I hear it from all of you in different ways.
I think another thing that was common in them is taking a look and finding a gap where a service or something is not being provided, and not duplicating something that's already there. You see, I know I've seen that quite a bit in Madison, where there's a whole bunch of people doing the same thing in small groups that could have a much more profound impact if they do it together.
We're talking about
questions. Go ahead, Monica.
You were talking about consistency, but I also think that, and Dave, you called it tripping backwards, but I would call it adaptability a little bit, which is that sometimes you have to be willing to shift on the fly, or try something different, or change when you see that the needs of the community that you're serving has evolved or changed in some way. The other thing is, don't the whole idea of not being afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to even ask the question. We would be going into our fourth year doing sandwiches on the park. Fourth, Bill, or third? Fourth, I think. I think it'll be our fourth year summer doing sandwiches in the park this summer. It involves packing 60 to 80 lunches on a given weekday morning every week, starting when school gets out till school goes back. So it's a whole summer commitment for the congregation. And we only got started doing it because one of the other churches that had been doing it for many years had to drop out because they lost their leadership and no one else was willing to pick it up. And I remember having a discussion with our senior warden, and I said, do you think we should volunteer to do it? And she said, "Boy, I just don't know if we have the person power for that." And I said, "Well, we won't know unless we ask the congregation." So don't be afraid to ask. Now, I'll be honest with you, getting sustained leadership for that summer program has been hard, because it's a, everybody wants to travel, it's vacation time, nobody wants to take on a whole summer program, but you don't know until you ask, right? So don't be afraid to ask in your communities, because your faith communities, because you may be surprised at who might raise their hand and say, "I'd be interested in doing that."
That's a great point, Monica. And I think if I could just add, definitely don't be afraid to ask, but also don't be afraid of the answer. Because the answer, as you say, is the answer might be, well, I just really, I don't see myself doing that. Because then it gives you the opportunity for the follow-up question. Well, what would you see yourself doing instead? What other idea do you have to bring to that? That has helped us in a number of ways in this whole thing, and I think that also sets an example for the same thing within our parish with other things, whether it be just whether people are lay reading or acolyting or ushering or welcoming, greeting. It's the same theory, really, to not be afraid to ask the question and not be afraid of the answer.
Yeah, and so often churches, and I don't know that we're better at this than any other denomination. We can kind of use guilt as a way to have people do things, and really, that's not the way Jesus operated, and that's not the way we want to operate. I don't think we want people to do stuff that they're joyful about and that they're cheerfully doing. And if it's not a joy, then stop. Um, and I really trust, and I talk to our people about this all the time. I really trust that God will give us what we need to do the work God's given us to do. If we just all do what we can do joyfully. Doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean that sometimes it's not going to be a drag. But it does mean, like, if it is a source of resentment and bitterness, and we have to keep doing, just stop, and it'll be okay. And God will equip us for the work that we're called to do. And if there's no one to do the work, then maybe we're not called to do that work anymore. And that's okay, because as Jeff says, it opens the possibility for new ministry. And you never know quite what that's going to be. Well, panelists, thank you so much. And thank you to those of you who attended. This is the first of, I hope, a number of web panels this year from the Community Engagement Mission Action Team. If you would like to be in the loop about what the Community Engagement Mission Action Team is up to, you can send an email to community@diowis.org, and we'd be happy to put you on the mailing list that is especially for this mission action team. So that will keep you informed about upcoming events. It'll also give you the dates and times for our steering committee meetings. So if there's an area or topic in terms of community engagement or outreach that you would like the diocese to focus on, and you're not hearing any programming from a diocesan level about it, come and join us for one of those meetings and tell us, hey, I'm really passionate about how we, for instance, I've gotten some emails this week, how we take care of immigrant and LGBTQ communities in this time that looks like we're kind of headed for a bad time, and not just for those groups, but maybe for a lot of us. So what are we doing on the diocesan level to try to work with and for those communities? That falls under the umbrella of this mission action team. As well as all of these outreach topics that we've talked about tonight. This is probably the broadest topic among the four the four mission action teams that we've chosen. So if there's something that you're particularly interested in and you would like to see some programming about, or some training about, or some diocesan ministry that would work with one of those areas, please come to a steering committee meeting and make your pitch, and we'd be happy to see where the Spirit will lead us in ministry together. So community@diowis.org, and you can just ask to be put on the mailing list. There'll also be a recording of this webinar that'll be available shortly, I think tomorrow or the next day, hopefully. And Bex Nelson, our communications director, will send a link to you since you registered for this webinar. If you didn't register and just popped in from a link somewhere, then also send a note to community@diowis.org, and be happy to get you the recording if you'd like to watch parts of it back later on. Thanks very much, and thanks for joining us tonight, and look forward to seeing you soon at another event.
Peace, friends.
Good night.